Okay. How do I do this? Everyone see that? I'm going to stop. Sorry, I'm in the wrong thing. Hi, everyone. Welcome to session 2 of Podcasting for Change. Today, we're just going to start off with a few of the housekeeping rules, but I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty here. So as seen in the chat, we have interpretation available in English, Spanish, and French. If you're watching the recording, then this will already be in your chosen language of either English, Spanish, or French. Please do mute your microphones if you're not speaking, as well as turning off your video if your connection is slow. Please feel free also to rename yourself so everyone knows who you are. And that is generally the housekeeping rules. As you see, there's a globe icon at the bottom of your screen if you want to choose your chosen language. In session 2, so session 1, just as a little recap, we went over some of the technical aspects of recording and editing your video using Audacity, your podcast. We also went through kind of the planning process, thinking through who is your target audience, what do you want to achieve from your podcast, and helping to really kind of set you off on the right foot. So you approach your podcast with a plan and with an idea of what you want to have at the end. Today, we'll look a little bit more at what you've done after that. You've got your podcast, you've edited it, at least your first session. And from that, you will then, in today's session, we'll be looking at how to get that out there into the world, how to make sure that the people that you're trying to reach with that are able to find your podcast and interested, and that's using social media, graphics, and also how to actually upload that podcast to the internet and to different hosting platforms. Before we continue, though, I'd like to give Chitira, co-host for today, an opportunity to say hello and introduce themselves. And again, my name is Ismail. I'm with the Global Forest Coalition. I'll be together with Chitira taking you through today's session 2.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chitira. I'm coming to you from Kerala, which is in South India. We're going to be taking you through everything that you need to do after your podcast is ready, which is equally, if not more important than the recording itself, to make sure that your podcasts don't just sit, in a folder in the computer or like a YouTube link that nobody's able to get to. So how do we make it accessible? How do we promote it? How do we go about getting it to all the people? How do we make sure your work is made visible? Also, as a quick side note, I'm running quite a bit of a high fever and my throat is very sore. So I'm going to be speaking a little softly today. And I think slowly, which I think the interpreters will appreciate. But thank you all so much for your understanding. And yeah, we're excited to get into it.
Thank you, Chitira. Hope you're feeling better soon. So with that, I think we'll go right into it. And today's session will hopefully be a little bit more interactive. So we'll start with those explanations and talk you through the different sort of processes that you need to do to get your podcast up. And then after that, hopefully we'll be able to have a little bit of discussion and have some questions and answers and respond to any specific questions that you may have. So starting off, the first issue here, or the first area that we want to look into today, is how to get your podcast up online. So there are a lot of different podcast hosting platforms out there. A hosting platform is basically, think of it as the cloud server. That's where your podcast is going to be stored. that's where all the other connections will come to when they listen to your podcast or download it. That is not the same as a directory. So you could go to Apple Podcasts or to Google Podcasts or Spotify. And these are directories, really. These are different apps that people use to access your podcast. A hosting platform is just one platform where it is actually stored. And those there are a lot of different aspects to that you need to think about before you choose which one to use. So I'll just run through a couple of those ideas or areas that you need to look into quickly. So first of all is the storage and bandwidth limits. So different podcasts, hosting platforms have different pricing models, as you see there, based on how many podcasts you're going to be putting up. So if you're going to be doing one a month and it's like 40 minutes long, then you don't really need a whole huge amount of storage. And there are many free podcast hosting platforms that would meet those needs. If, for say, that you're doing something a little bit more frequent, so perhaps you want to do one a week, you're doing interviews, you have things set up, and you may have 3-4 hours of podcasts coming out each month, then you may want to be looking for something with a little bit more bandwidth and a little bit more storage capacity. The other thing that the different podcasting platforms, hosting platforms have is the analytics and the insights. So a lot of them will provide you with a breakdown. How many people have listened to your podcast? How many people have downloaded it? They may also have the opportunity to have feedback. So podcast listeners are able to rate your show, leave comments and questions, and that can all be aggregated through the different directories that people are listening to your podcast through. These can be very useful, and you can understand what's working, what isn't working. You'll see, oh, maybe this episode that I did on this issue, oh, wow, I got a lot more listeners, and try to think about why that was, and it'll help you kind of, as you go forward, to hone your podcasts and see what is more popular. This, I don't think, will be relevant to a lot of us here, but there are obviously a lot of commercial podcasts out there, and some of them do have monetization options. Could be something to consider in terms of fundraising for community work or other efforts that you may be involved in. But basically we'll be inserting ads and things, but I think a lot of that, there's not a huge amount of control of what those advertisements are, and it may not align with the values of your podcast. So it's something to really think about. Us at GFC, we are not monetizing our podcast. It's out there for other purposes. And then the final thing to consider is just how easy it is. How's the interface? Is it available in your language, your primary language? Is it simple? How is it laid out? Or is it something that's sort of overwhelming and complicated? And I'll run through in a minute just a few of the key podcasting hosting platforms to consider. The one is Libsyn. It's a very big hosting platform. It offers a lot of different pricing plans. May not be something that's necessary for a smaller podcasting project, but could be something to consider if you were doing a lot of different podcasts. The others are Podbean, Buzzsprout. They're all very easy, user-friendly options, and I think definitely worth considering, and they also have free plans. The other one also is Spotify for podcasters, which is also very useful. It used to be Anchor, and there's a lot of consolidation actually happening in the podcast hosting platform world at the moment. So ones that did appear before are now being taken up by others. So it's a little bit confusing, but Spotify for podcasters is quite a straightforward tool. It's free, and it has a very useful and easy interface, as does Buzzsprout, of being able to, once you have your podcast up, then actually share it to all these other directories, whether that would be Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify itself, Podbean, and a lot of different ones. So maybe if I stop sharing here, I will maybe just run through quickly just to show you how to do this, and it might help you. It's generally very straightforward. I may actually, if I can share my whole desktop, it might actually be the easiest. So I'm going to do that. There we go. So I think everyone can see my whole screen there. I'm actually run through, take a little step back to last week. So often, even if you don't have your podcast ready, you could even upload and share a trailer to your podcast. So I'm just going to show again a little bit of how to get your podcast out of Audacity. So I'm going to search here for AUP.3 files. Is that right? No. Go to my documents here. So I've got a trailer episode that and that's the MP3. Sorry about this. Here we go. Yeah, AUP3, not .3. There we go. So this is the trailer that I've been working on in Audacity. So to show you again, we can zoom in here. This is kind of an intro. We don't need to interpret the sound here, but I'll just show you this kind of what we've been working on.
Welcome to Roots of Resilience on the Front Lines of Climate Justice, a podcast by the Global Forest Coalition. GFC is a feminist coalition of organizations around the world supporting forest conservation with a focus on gender justice, human rights, and social equity. In Roots of Resilience, we talk with coalition members and allies about what they're doing to advance real solutions to climate change and forest loss.
Okay, generally happy with that. Very good introduction from our very own Megan there. So this has all been edited. We have it there. So to export, we go to File. We're going to export as an MP3, as you remember from session 1. And you'll be given the option, probably, hopefully. So you check here, so the presets are all fine here. Change the name. We'll call it trailer 2. And then we're going to save that. So it's going to be mixed down into one file. Yes, we're happy with that. And here, we can add in some metadata, which can be useful. So this is the Global Forest Coalition. And we put in the track title, episode 2 trailer, track number 2 maybe, the year 2023, genre podcast. Sorry, what's that? Okay. So we're exporting that. So now we're going to have our podcast ready to upload. So we've done that. We can quit Audacity. I'm going to save changes to that. Okay. So on here, I don't know, move this around. Sorry, it's not the most. I can move that down. There we go. So you can sign up. It's very simple, straightforward. I'm going to log in here because I should already have an account. But if you don't have your account, you have to sign up, and then you have to just click on an email to show that that email is yours. So we're going to go for Spotify for podcasters. I'm going to log in with Google. Hopefully it is signed up. Unauthorized. Okay. Sorry about this. Try again. Let's sign up. Maybe I don't have an account. Yes, so we sign our name. Oh no, sorry, I'm doing this all wrong. There we go. Oh. Create a password. Let's say global. Okay. Where we go. Let's sign up. Okay. So that takes us in. So we're going to make our first podcast. It gives you these options. And this is the way we're going to go through. Okay. So we go in. So we've just downloaded our file. So we're going to find that file. Roots of Resilience Trailer 2. So we're going to say this Roots of Resilience Trailer 2. Roots of Resilience 2 trailer. Okay. You have to write in a description. You would generally take a bit more time to go through this than I'm going to do right now. But we could just say in Roots of Resilience. No, wait a second. Find out about EFC's latest podcast, Roots of Resilience. The idea here is to put in a lot of keywords, the stuff that you're working on, the issues, what's going to be in there, and something attractive that would get people to listen. Today, I'm going to keep it very simple, but you probably take your time to really think about that and draft that in a way that would really attract people. So we can publish this now, or we can schedule it for later. I'll click on now, just for now. Does it include explicit content? No, it does not. And then we can go down here for additional details. We'll choose an episode type. This is actually just a trailer. This is season number 1, episode number 2. After this little session here, I'm going to talk you through a little bit about how to make cover art. And you can add that, but we can add that later. So we've added all that in. We've uploaded our file. We've written a description. Then we're going to go to next. So we can add in questions and answers. We can keep that in. We can add in a poll, as we were saying before about analytics. I'm going to leave that out for now. And then we can review that and we'll be able to publish it. So for now, I'm going to publish that and I'll show you a little bit later. Remember the step later, that option to add the cover art, which is really useful. And we'll get into that a little bit more. Oh, I need to verify my email address. So here we go. Something I missed there, a very important step. We'll go back there. Confirm my email address. Confirm my email. Go back to home. I'm going to finish this one. Roots of Resilience Trailer 2. We can check it out. We can listen to it.
Welcome to Roots of Resilience on the Front Lines of Climate Justice, a podcast by the Global Forest Coalition. GFC is a feminist coalition of organizations around the world supporting forest conservation with a focus on gender justice, human rights, and social equity. In Roots of Resilience, we talk with coalition members and allies about what they're doing to advance real solutions to climate change and forest loss.
So it's important to listen through, check through, make sure that it's uploaded properly. We're not going to add a poll this time. And we're not going to add this stuff. So it's all good to go. We can go up here to settings and look here for podcast availability. So I'm going to go back to the slideshow, but show you a little bit more in detail in a minute. These are all the different directories that we were talking about. So this is other places where we can listen to, people can access your podcast. And that's using what they call an RSS feed. Spotify, it will give you detailed instructions about how to do all of these. You go through, so you follow the link, you go up to the iHeartRadio, and you'll have to have your RSS feed. If you see down here also, it will say need help with RSS distribution. It'll open up this page, it'll talk you through. But essentially, each podcast has its own code name, which is called an RSS feed. And you take that RSS feed, you copy and paste it into all the different platforms that you want to share or distribute your podcast on. It's ideally you would share them as much as possible, wherever you want and wherever you think most of your listeners will be accessing. But you can go in here, it's very well explained. It's quite a straightforward process. So once you have your show, once you have your podcast up and running and uploaded to the directory, then you can then, as I said, share it with all the different, on all these different directories. So I'm going to go back to, I'm going to stop sharing with this, and I'm going to go back and share the slide screen. Here we go. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm going to escape out of that. So I hope everyone can see the slides now. We've gone back a bit. Okay, so these were all the different ones to choose from. So I recommend Spotify, Buzzsprout, and Podbean are all quite good. Podbean has a free option for less, I think, or Buzzsprout both have up to like 2 hours of podcast a month. So if you're going to do 2 podcasts at 40 minutes each, you won't need to pay. Some of them, though, will have limitations on how long they will host that podcast for. So perhaps after 9 months, people won't be able to access it anymore. So that's something to think about. So as I've just walked you through there, the different ways of sort of obtaining your RSS feed and submitting it to different directories, as you say, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. These are all very common directories where people will be able to access your podcast. So I don't know if anyone has any questions at this point on this particular part of the process. There's a lot of information online. Feel free to raise your hand or open your mic and ask questions, or put questions into the chat if you have any questions regarding this. Ayuska, you have a question?
Sorry, no, I didn't have a question.
Okay. Thank you. So I see a yes there. So again, as I said in the last, Chitira and I said in session 1, feel free to also email us after, and we'll also have opportunities at the end of today to have open discussion and address some of those questions that people have shared over the week with us. So from here, I'll move on to the next part. So you've done your podcast, you've edited it, you've chosen your hosting platform, and generally before you publish it, this step is creating cover art. It is a really important step. And again, you may have colleagues or others that are good at design and you feel could maybe support you and help you on this. But there's also it's also quite a straightforward process and something I think that could be enjoyable to do using what I would recommend is Canva. Canva is a user-friendly, it's a graphic design tool. It's very straightforward. It's basically click, drag, drop. It's very intuitive. There is a free version, which is, generally fine for what you would need for these purposes. Also, if you work for a civil society organization or recognized charity or non-governmental organization, then you can get the premium version for free, which has some slightly better options and is a little bit more user-friendly. You can change the size of things and stuff. So I'll just sort of run you through these slides that which we will share afterwards. Will basically talk you through all the process and the steps to actually design that logo and that cover art step by step. But what I'm going to do now is just run through a little example of how to use it potentially, and just hopefully, if things go well, show you how straightforward it can be. So I'm going to stop sharing again, this one, and I'm going to share again a different page. So just give me one moment. I'm going to open up Canva. There we go. And I'm going to share. Sorry about that. 1 second. I'm going to share this one. Okay, so hopefully everyone should now be able to see this screen. So this is Canva. This is the interface that you come in with. Once you've signed up, you'll have your own account. It's a pretty straightforward process, like all these websites. You sign in, you give your email address, and then confirm that email, and you will then have access to Canva. As I said, up here, there's the plans and pricing. It's free. There's also for teams of different sizes and not-for-profit. You see, not-for-profit is free for all registered nonprofits. So if you are working for a nonprofit organization, I highly recommend you go for that version. So you go up here to create a design. And here you'll be given a list of different things. So you might want a poster, a Facebook post, something for Instagram. And I'll show you again later that you can start on a design and then resize it for all these different purposes. But let's go for a logo then for our podcast. So you would start here with a blank canvas. This is the size. This is the general dimensions of the logo. You can resize it if you want, but this is perfectly good for podcast cover art. Along here, you have the different choices of elements that you can bring in. So elements here would be, you can do shapes, graphics, stickers, photos, all sorts of things. And you basically sort of find what you want and bring them over to there. And then you can also add text, and you can upload your own files and images, whether that would be potentially the logo of your organization or something else you were working on. You can also search on Google Images for other images that you might not be able to find here. So let's start. So for this one, I will just go through sort of roots of resilience, I guess. So we kind of, let's start with a square to fill in this background. So if you want some kind of just a sort of a normal square, you can just click on a square and that will be in there. This is kind of curved as well, little nice beveled edges, and you can just drag it around like so, and that will be your kind of background. You can fill it up if you like. Up here, you can change the color. You can go for this or this, any color you want. You can also do all sorts of other changes to it. But for me, I think for this one, I'm not going to go for that one. So I'm going to press delete there. I'm going to go for, if you look on photos, you can get some more sort of textured backgrounds. So basically you can drag it across, or you can just click on the file and it will come up. So there we go. That's our background. Nice colors, fitting slightly with GFC, Global Forest Coalition. There's greens in there. So you might want to search for other elements. So let's go for roots. So we want to, our podcast is called Roots of Resilience. So again, you would get all these different graphics and options to use. Again, you can just click on it and it will enter in there. You can drag it. You can change the size as you like. Earlier, and I'll show you again before, so I uploaded some images before, which I wanted to use. To do that, you kind of click on upload files, and you find the image that you might have, it might be your logo, for example. So GFC logo. There we go. So we want to use that. I press open. And now I have the logo up here and I can use that. Again, I can just click on that and it will go into the document. But I'm not going to use that right now. I'm going to go back to the roots. So I searched for some things earlier and I found this one, which I quite like. I like the roots in this. So we could use that potentially. It's nice. It's free to use. There's no copyright involved. We'd also want to add in the name of our podcast. So let's call it Roots of Resilience. And similar to, using any program, you can highlight the text, you can change the font. So you go down here, click up here, and then down here you can choose your font. Let's go for Montserrat Classic. You might want to make it a bit bigger. We might want to choose a different color. So you go up here to text color. Now in here, which is always a useful document, it will have similar colors that are already in your picture. So these are document colors here. So that really helps with keeping the consistency of the image. Everything's tied together, which is very helpful. So basically Canva just finds all the different colors that are represented already in that picture and gives us the option of recreating that to keep it in line. So this is sort of the lighter brown of the tree here. Now, as you see, the tree is kind of rounded here. It might be nice as a logo to maybe have the words going around. So we can do effects here, and it brings up this panel. And you come down to here. Let's lift this up a bit. And we go to curve, and that automatically curves it. And you can drag it around like that. It looks quite nice. Don't want it on the tree. Maybe the font is too large, so we can bring that down maybe. We can also, if you go here, change the, I don't know what you call it, the curve, that's what they call it, so it doesn't go stripes around. So maybe like that would look a bit nicer. And then maybe we wanted to add some more text. So we could say a podcast by the Global Forest Coalition. Again, we can Control A if you would like, select all that text. Make that a bit smaller. And move that down there like that. Excuse me, we can put that down here maybe, or in here. So you can play around with it, do whatever you like. You see this line comes up, we'll show you that it's centered, which will help keep everything symmetrical in form. This is the right box. Maybe we can bold that, put that in white, maybe look nice. There we go, it stands out. Now also with these images, once they're in there, so we've got roots, but we don't really see the resilience maybe in there. So what we can do is we can edit this photo. And up here, you will see crop. So we could take out the top of that and crop it down to this. And then press enter. So now we've taken out the top of the tree. So we've got the roots. And we could go back and say, well, how could we represent resilience maybe? So we could type in resilience. And again, down here, you'll have different photos or graphics. I think for this, because we're using images, graphics would be better. So we can click on see all. So we've got some fists, so we could have a look at that. Representing resilience. And that could be something to consider for our logo. And as you see, I mean, I'm not taking much time to go through this, but you really have a lot of time and a lot of options to go through and consider what you would like to do. But if we don't like that, we could then go back to elements, and maybe we could choose sort of people protesting, maybe, or climate protest. You could look in there. Is there something that would fit? Some of these are maybe too colorful. We could just look for normal protest. on here. So you could consider maybe something like this would look good. But as you see, it's pretty much drag and drop. You know, maybe it's not colorful enough like that. So we could search, maybe this one would look nicer. And you could even add in text potentially on these banners here. You can also move elements. So you can right click, you can move elements backwards and forwards. You can also group elements. So maybe you want to group this tree and the thing. And we press group like that. And then we can just move the whole thing around together. And then if we wanted to decide to ungroup that, we click here to ungroup. But that might be considered, okay, this is nice. But maybe if we have an organization, we would also think about adding our logo. So we could click on the logo that we uploaded and maybe stick that up here. Would that look nice on the poster? There we go. So I hope this helps a little to show the options. That was very rushed and very quick, and potentially not a finished product there. But you can also, you like that, but you think you want to do another one, so you can copy it. If we've made a copy on here, you can still see that new tab. And then play around with that again, using that as a basis to do something a little bit different. But again, so Canva is very straightforward. Also, if you go on YouTube or online, there will be tutorials that will help you further. But I hope it shows that I think pretty much anyone should be capable of designing their own cover art for their podcast. And it's an important step. I think if you don't have that, it's going to be very difficult to catch people's eyes. And then you can also use this for social media and other different tools. So I think, again, there's a question here. How do you know there's no copyright during your search and upload? Yeah, so on Google Images, if you search, so all of these ones in here, there's no copyright. They're all free to use. So anything that you find in Canva is free to use. All these graphics, there's no copyright. You don't have to list who it is. If you're looking on Google Images, you can search up here. So we can go for an image search. Let's look for roots like that. We go to images.
Hi, Ismail.
You
Sorry
can't
to
see-
interrupt.
can't
Just
see
stop.
the
I think
screen.
just, yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Very good interruption. I'm going to share that again. So you just go to roots here. Can you see that now? I hope you can.
Yes, we can.
Go to roots. So I've gone to Google, I put in roots, and then I've chosen images, and then more, tools. You can go down here and you click and it says usage rights. So Creative Commons license is generally meaning it's free to use. Some of those you may have to list the source, but they're generally all free to use and you can check. So these are public domain images such as that. So I hope that responds to your question there. You can look for logo versions. And again, these would be in the tools, you check the usage rights. And again, Creative Commons license, meaning they're generally free for you to use. I'm going to stop sharing there and go back to the slide presentation.
Hi, Ismail. Just quickly wanted to add one thing.
Yeah, please.
Not all images on Canva are free to use. They are free to use if you have a pro account or like if you have a paid account, or if like us, if like GFC, we have an account for NGOs. But it's very easy to tell because there'll be a little crown with the words pro written on top of it. Those are not free to use, but everything else is. And there's plenty that you can use for free.
Thank you. Very good and important addition there, Shatira. So I'm going to go then back to the slide presentation, hopefully, which is over here. And as I showed you back there before, you would go back to your podcast. You would go back to your podcast hosting platform. The one thing I didn't show you actually is how to download your thing. So I'll just show you quickly, and then we'll, I think, move to a break. So once you've got it and you're happy with it, you go up here to File, and then you go to Download. Generally, it says PNG suggested, but generally a JPEG would be sufficient. But it doesn't make too much of a difference. Most of those files would be acceptable, and you would download that, and that would be in your files, and then you would then upload that to your podcast hosting platform, and that would also sync across all the different providers that you are signed up to as well. So with that, if there are no more questions, I think we'll move to a 5-minute break. And I think if that's good for everyone, we can come back in 5 minutes. That's at 12:56 UTC time. And we'll carry on with the rest of the session, which Chetira will be taking forward from there. So thank you very much. See you all in 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Can we begin to come back? Are most of us back already? If you are, could you put a reaction or a yes in the chat? Okay. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Thank you so much, Ismail, for that really comprehensive look, including the design, the artwork, the uploading, everything. Thank you so much. And now we're going to get a bit into how we're going to promote this fantastic podcast you created and how to make it accessible to as many people as possible. I hope all of you can see my screen and that all of you can hear me. Okay, let's get into it. Part 2. Now, you've created this podcast, you've gone out there, you've recorded everything, you've edited it down to tell the story that you want to tell, and everything's in place, right? Now, how do you get it to the audience that you have in mind? Now, in session 1, if you remember, or you can go back and review the recording, we asked you to sort of figure out who your ideal audience will be, or who you think your audience might be, and how to strategize the content for your website around that, right? Now, there are two possibilities, right? One is that you already have a massive audience. Say you're an organization with a 2 million follower count on your social media, or you have, 500K people signed up on your newsletters. That already means you have an inbuilt audience right there, right? But this is not always the case. Often you have to, when you start your podcast, you have to really go step by step to build the audience for it. If you go and look at successful YouTubers, for instance, you'll see often that when they started their first video or their first 10, or sometimes even their first 50 videos, they had maybe 50 views, 60 views if they were lucky. And then somewhere something clicks and they catapulted into virality. It becomes, the content is suddenly everywhere, right? So now how do we go about doing that? How do we make sure we've ticked all the boxes to make sure we have, and we're gonna reach everyone we want to reach, and that people can find us too, right? Well, the first and most important thing for this is to create a strong and accessible podcast website. This is not a negotiable factor. This is absolutely necessary if you are going to have a podcast. This is simply because of how the internet works. So if you have a website, when people put in, say, the name of your podcast or put in keywords related to your podcast, so if, say, you put in sea level rise or people Googling key terms, your podcast website should ideally come up within the first few pages on Google, right? Which is called search engine optimization. Now, this is a whole other, we could take 5 sessions on just search engine optimization. We're not going to get into that, but basically to start with, what you want to do is to create a website that Google can find. Second, make sure it's accessible. What does it mean to have an accessible website? An accessible website is one that people with, say, a range of disabilities could access. For instance, somebody for people with visual disabilities, a black text on a white background, like these slides, right? You can see right now it's a black text on a white background, is better than a black text. Is better than a black background with white text. Does that make sense? So if these slides were fully black and my text was in white, this would be a harder slide for people with visual disabilities to read because the contrast is too much. Okay, you can find, if you Google accessible websites, a lot of these things will come up. The second thing is to make sure that the fonts you use, there are some fonts that are more easier for people with visual disabilities to read. Make sure your website uses one of these fonts. Again, this is information that you can find online, and there are hundreds of options. So you can choose which one you like from it. Make sure that your website, anyone who comes to your website is able to understand what's up there, is able to access the information there. Moving on to building an email list. This kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? This is actually really key. This is really key. Now, if you have, maybe you already have a pre-made audience list, like there are people signed up to the GFC newsletter list, whom we promoted our podcast to, because we already had their email addresses. What you want to start doing, if you don't already, is at every event, at every meeting, whether it's online or offline, start collecting information on how you can reach your audience, reach people who have shown up to your events before. Collect their email addresses, collect their phone numbers if they're fine with it, and use them with consent, obviously. You know, don't randomly WhatsApp somebody saying, they listen to our podcast, but make sure that you have a way of reaching out to them. Make sure they understand what they're signing up for, if they're okay with receiving information about what your organization is doing. Collect this information. Make sure you reach out to all of them when you have a new podcast. Okay. The third thing is to promote your podcast on social media. All of us know, whether we like it or not, we live in a social media age, right? If something doesn't happen on social media, it's something not recorded on social media, almost dishearteningly, I have to admit, because I didn't grow up in a world where we had social media all the time. So it's been quite a shift, right? And I think for many of us, it's been quite a shift to having our presence constantly on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Spotify. Like there are, dozens and dozens of social media websites, but this is just a necessary part of promoting your website. To make this easier, there are websites, which I will put in the chat. I put some suggestions in the chat for social media management tools. For instance, if you post on one social media page, say I post something on Twitter, it automatically posts it to Facebook, to Instagram, to LinkedIn, whatever, right? It automatically sends it out to all of our platforms. So I don't have to go and sit and share it to every single one of them. But you have to do this. This is not negotiable. You have to really make it look also exciting for social media. Also, social media is a great place to run contests and giveaways on social media. This depends on what your organization does and what sort of practices are comfortable for your organization. But for instance, you could give away stickers. You could give away, if you have, GFC has a bunch of humorous stickers talking about climate change, about deforestation, about corporate capture, all of these stickers, for instance. And you could run a contest to give away a bunch of stickers. You could run a contest to give away a T-shirt with the name of your organization printed on it. Just small things. Usually people, it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to give away like 1,000 euros or anything. It can be something small, but as long as it's something meaningful, you will get people to participate. You say, hey, like we're having a contest for a caption contest for our podcast. Anyone who sends in the best slogan for our podcast wins such and such a gift. So it creates engagement again, right? The fourth is, which Ismail has done a fantastic job of taking us through, is to submit your podcast to directories. Again, this will help people find your show when they are searching for podcast, right? Because there is, at the end of the day, even if you have the best social media game out there, you're not going to reach every human being on the planet. So what you want to do is you want to be accessible through these directories. So when people put in a particular topic, or they put in Indigenous women, for instance, your podcast should come up, right? Now, interview other podcasters. This is another incredible strategy, right? Maybe you know other organizations. Maybe some of you will all be starting podcasts simultaneously, and you can start to interview each other. So what does this do? say I have a viewership of say 2,000 people, and say Ayushka, you have a viewership or listenership of 5,000 people. So when we collaborate and when we interview each other, we'll be sharing our listeners, right? Like, so you get an additional 2,000 listeners from me, and I get 5,000 additional listeners from you. And the chances are that most people are going to be interested in topics, especially in these topics, right? Especially if they're aligned somewhat in terms of topic, in terms of politics, things like that. So try and interview other podcasters for some of your episodes. Run a podcast contest. We covered this already, but this can also be a separate thing. You can do it on your website. You can do it on various platforms. Next is to create video teasers for your podcast episodes. This is actually a great idea if you have the resources and the time for it. And thankfully now with things like Instagram Reels and things like that, video editing is not as time consuming as it used to be. It is still time consuming, definitely. It definitely takes more time than editing just audio. But say you have, if you're doing a podcast on mining and you have some footage that you want to give as like a 10-second teaser for what a place looks like after a mining company has gone through it, right? So maybe you show some of the footage of the forests, the destroyed livelihoods, all this. Maybe there's a video that will capture people's interests faster than them listening to the entire introduction of your podcast and then listening to the whole podcast. You also have more platforms to publicize your video teasers on, right? You can put it up on Instagram, you can share it on YouTube. Again, attracts more listeners. The next is to transcribe your podcast episodes. We'll get into this more when we talk about accessibility, but it's also important to mention here is that accessibility, of course, to making our podcast accessible to as many people as possible is a social justice issue, right? We don't want to just create a podcast that certain kinds of people find comfortable accessing. I think by WHO's estimates, about 1.5 billion people in the world are hard of hearing or deaf, right? Does that just mean that they shouldn't listen to podcasts? No, of course not, right? So you create a transcript. What's a transcript? You create a text transcription of your podcast episode, which you no longer have to do yourself. There are free tools available on the internet that will listen to the audio and will generate a transcript for you. You just have to go back and check it again. Again, I'll put some of the tools that we use in the chat, but always transcribe your podcast episode fully and thoroughly. One other advantage of having this transcript up is that it also makes your podcast more searchable on Google. Why? Because Google doesn't search audio files; it searches for keywords for text. So if you have a transcript that has the word climate change and indigenous women like 50 times in the transcript, Google is more likely to pick those up and say, hey, when somebody searches for indigenous women and climate change, I should point them to this link because it seems like they're talking about it a lot, right? So always have a transcription, like a full transcript of the interviews up on your podcast website. And link them wherever you post your website. You can link them to where you can find the transcripts. And of course, finally, be patient and consistent. This is kind of links back to what I said earlier. If building an audience there are some people who get very lucky and, their first podcast is the first episode of the hit, but oftentimes it is a slow process and it takes time to build your listenership, and it does take time and it takes a lot of effort too. Okay. Right now, moving on to the next set, which is to use high quality audio. This is essential for a podcast, obviously. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you're watching a video that's not super clear, a little bit grainy, it's not very clear, you might actually still watch it, even if it's not super clear. You are you might watch the first 15-20 seconds of it. But if your audio is bad, if there's disturbance, if there's like static and it's badly edited and there's background noise, would you continue listening? No. People are much more likely to turn off something with bad audio than with bad video quality. This has been proven many times across many studies. Okay, so always use high quality audio. If you feel like a file isn't very clear, I would suggest don't use it. Okay, because they instantly, if people find an audio file or a part of the audio irritating or it sits badly, people tend to turn it off. Think about yourself, right? Think about your own experience watching videos online. So always use high quality audio. Referring back to the slides from session 1, we suggested some good microphones and some techniques to record for free using just the equipment you have, right? So yeah, this is very important. Have a clear and concise description of your podcast, right? So today, during Ismail's session, we saw there are boxes to add a description of what your podcast is when you upload your podcast, right? This description is very important because this description is really going to capture the interest of somebody who's scrolling through like hundreds of possible podcasts to listen to, right? So they're going to be scrolling, and what are they going to see? They're going to see the name of your podcast, and they're going to check out the description. If it looks interesting, also your cover art. If it looks interesting, if the description sounds compelling, chances are obviously higher that people are going to come listen. So build it like a very interesting description. Don't use a lot of formal language. Don't use a very don't use language that would create distance between you and the audience, right? Think of the kind of descriptions that would attract you or the kind of people that you want to attract to your podcast. What kind of words would appeal to them? Do they want a humorous description? Maybe they want like a really lighthearted description. Maybe they want something which simplifies a lot of jargon without using technical words, right? So that's also really important. Link to that is to use relevant keywords in your podcast title and description. The same thing. Those keywords are really what people are going to be searching for, right? So whatever the crux, the core, the essence of your podcast is, you want those keywords up there. Most podcast platforms also allow you to have tags where you can tag it, and say climate change, indigenous people, decolonization. So these are keywords that people tend to search for. And then you want to also don't have these keywords, as many keywords as possible up there. Not as many as possible. I would say keep it to under 5 so that you don't clutter it and it doesn't get lost. So have the 5 or less than 5 important keywords, important tags for your podcast should always be in your description on your podcasting platform and on your website. The next is to promote your podcast to your existing audience. We covered this a bit in the early section when we talked about building an email list, but yeah, you might have different kinds of audiences. You might have audiences who show up to your webinars. You might have audiences that show up to your offline events. You might have audiences that show up to workshops. You might have audiences that it might be a bit compartmentalized. Reach out to all of them. You have nothing to lose. What is the most that can happen? They don't listen? Yeah, but you might actually gain a ton of followers this way. So take a good bird's eye view of how vast the entirety of your audience is, not just the emails that you have, but the entirety of your audience. Can you reach out to college-going youth? Is there a way that they're connected to you? Tap into new possible spaces where there might be interest and get this information out there. And finally, just remember to be creative with your promotion. These are the things that I've listed are kind of the standard methods in a sense. But there are so many ways that people have not thought of yet, right? Because they're waiting for you to come up with it. So just think about how you would like to be reached out to. Think about how you would like a podcast to find you, and then implement that as part of your promotion strategy. All right. Now, how to make your podcast accessible and discoverable. Again, to reiterate, making your podcast accessible to people with all sorts of disabilities is a social justice issue. And this is something that I think all of us take very seriously, which is why you have to provide transcripts. There are, like I mentioned, there are captioning services like rev.com or Otter AI, which allow you to transcribe audio for free. Like, I think they have a fixed amount for, like, I think that you can do like, I think 40 minutes or something a month for free. And then if you want to do more than that, you have to get a paid account. There are also other platforms that allow you to use, right now, there are a lot of AI tools that allow transcription for free. We'll suggest some in the chat after I finish this. But yeah, always develop a full transcript. The next is to use descriptive audio. Okay, this means providing text descriptions of non-verbal audio cues, such as background noise, music, sound effects. Okay, so what's an example of this? You listen to the introduction that Ismail played for us about GFC's intro to GFC's podcast, right? And then you hear there's some smooth electronic music. All right. And then there's some birds chirping in the background. So these are things that usually people tend to miss. When I write up a transcript, I might just transcribe the actual contents of the interview. But don't do that. Why should they miss out on these little details? Because that's really what adds life to your podcast, right? Adds color to your podcast. Or so, for instance, if you are recording again at a mining site, if you have audience, if you have a listenership that won't be able to pick up, say, the background noise of machinery, people shouting, chaos, include these descriptions in your transcript so that people can understand the mood of the podcast. Because when you read a text, there's only so much, really there's very little emotion that it can convey. So just make sure to be very descriptive with all the other audio sounds as well. Add show notes, again, very important. This is a good place to add show notes. Some podcasting platforms allow you to add show notes, or you can add it to your website as well. So this is like a summary, right? So say I've interviewed 2 people and they've made primarily like 3 solid points each. This summary would say, we speak to XYZ, this person from this community, and they say 1, 2, 3, list the 3 main points that they got to. Sorry. And you include the key points, you include the topics covered, and any relevant links and resources that people might want to look into after they listen to your podcast. So it should be like your podcast in a capsule form, right? If somebody wants to quickly get a gist of what was covered, this should be the place to look for it. Show notes are also great for search engine optimization because it'll have a lot of the keywords again, right? Yes. Now, moving on to optimizing your podcast for search engines. Like I said, this can be a whole session on its own, but one simple way to do it is to use relevant keywords everywhere in your title, in your description, in your show notes, so that it is more likely to come up when people search for it on search engine platforms. Again, this video teasers are important even when it comes to accessibility, because a lot of people, if there are people who are hard of hearing or are deaf, it's very unlikely that they're going to be browsing just on, say, Podbean or Spotify, right? They're more likely to be on visual platforms like, say, Instagram. So if you have a video teaser of your podcast up on your Instagram page, then listeners are more likely to say, oh, this clip looks really interesting, and then go back to it. And maybe that clip is even there. The audio of that clip is in the podcast too. So it provides a nice link, it captures the narrative in a really nice way. The next is, of course, to speak clearly and slowly, as our interpreters keep reminding us. Sometimes we tend to, when the topic is interesting and when we're getting into it, and it's like a really passionate discussion, we tend to like speak really fast and start and splutter and just get really all into it. So always remember that this is, people are going to be listening to the audio in all sorts of settings. People are going to be listening in their cars, right? When they're half distracted by traffic. People are going to be listening at home when they're doing their like household chores. People are going to be listening just before they like go to bed. So you're not, no, it's very unlikely that people are listening to a podcast like sitting up in a chair in a meditative stance and like, I will now listen to Roots of Resilience and do nothing else. That's rarely the case, right? People are going to be super distracted. So you want to also be mindful of that and play to that. You want to keep it accessible to people with limited attention spans. You want to make it very easy to understand. Now, avoid using jargon or technical terms, right? Now, what does this mean? Climate change is a great example of this, right? For the average person listening to a podcast about the technical terms that are used in climate change would be incomprehensible. There are acronyms, there's all sorts of short forms, Article 6.1, Article 6.2, geoengineering, thermal. It's a lot. It's too much. And nobody is going to sit and research all the terms in order to understand your podcast. What do you have to do? You have to make your podcast the source of information where they come to find out about this. So say you casually mention Article 6.1. Okay, what is Article 6.1, right? In climate change work. So describe it in the simplest way. One really good way to think about this is to think of the ELI 5 method, which is explain like I'm 5. How would you explain this concept to a 5-year-old? Okay, however you would do that, you want to basically communicate in that way when you are describing technical terms or complex jargon. And trust me, it's not dumping it out too much, because it's only when you try to explain it like you're explaining to a child that you'll realize how many assumptions you're coming with, that like, oh, this person already knows all this. That person already knows what I'm talking about. No. How would you explain this to somebody who has absolutely no idea what some of these terms are? So always keep that in mind. It also increases the base, your audience base, by multitudes. You're not just catering to like the 200 people all over the planet who know exactly what all these terms mean. You are talking to millions of people who want to find out what these terms mean, right? So you want to keep it really simple, really accessible. And yes, again, use descriptive language to describe non-verbal cues. This is also an important point when it comes to accessibility. You always want to be descriptive. And I'll add one more thing here, not just to describe non-verbal cues like sounds and background music, but also in your podcast, try to be as descriptive about what you are, what you're talking about. Don't just say, yeah, and then the sea came into the houses, for instance, right? You want to describe it in detail, tell it like a story, like a narrative, so that people can picture it in their mind's eye. This also makes it more accessible to people. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that brings us to the end of how to promote your podcast and how to make it more accessible, discoverable. I see there are some questions in the chat. I'm quickly going to answer that. And then I think we're going to open out to a more open Q&A. We'll also answer some of the questions that we received by email and which were mentioned in chat in the last session, which we didn't get to. So first, I'm just going to respond to some of these questions in the chat, and then we'll get to we'll get to the rest. Okay. Are there good programs to help transcribe interviews and good format to present them, or an example? Yes, definitely. I'll share them in the chat for you, Aiska. Otter AI and Rev.ai is a are great examples. Yes, there are good formats to present them. They always have to have timestamps, just to say you have to, the transcript cannot just be a block of text. It has to be linked to what was said at what time. Does that make sense? So like at 6 minutes into the podcast, what was said? I'll share a link in the chat for you, so you can take a look. Okay, are there any other questions about what we just talked about? Or can we go to a more open Q&A? Oh, I don't know what that was. Are there any other questions? Okay, fantastic. Ismail, shall we open it up for a Q&A and start going through the questions? Oh, you're muted.
Technical difficulties, always, see? Not so easy. Thank you, Chatira. That was so helpful, so clear, and really, yeah, going through those step by step. We'll share these slides with everyone in French, Spanish, and English after. So you'll be able to keep those as a resource. Remember, we also shared last week another resource sheet, but also those who are watching the recording of this, you can also get into contact, put a comment if you have any other questions or want to follow up. There were some questions that were shared by email, and some technical ones, I think, around separating audio from video, I think was one of the questions. So you may have a video and you want to use some of the audio from that. Again, make sure it's your video, you have the copyright. Also, very good practice, if you have that audio. So number one, you can do that. There are programs online. It's quite straightforward. Generally free programs that you can separate audio and video from. If you do a quick Google search, how do I separate the audio from my video file, you'll find some. Usually my approach is scroll down 5 or 6, because they're usually the ones that have some kind of paid thing, or so be careful, read the small print. It is possible if you have a Mac, you can use some of the inbuilt like iMovie and other things. VLC, I think, is one free video player that is quite a useful tool for a lot of different things. And you can usually separate it out and it will download the audio from that video. But cautionary there is, you can't just take audio from any video somewhere that you found and then reproduce that and put that on your podcast. Also, maybe you have video that you've taken, but at the time you've spoken to people, if you haven't asked them for their permission to reproduce that or be able to share that on your podcast, it's not proper practice. People, it's their words and their thoughts and their ideas, and so you really need to go back, if you can, to that person if it's an interview or something, and try and seek their permission. Oh, I'm doing this podcast, what you said was so amazing, can I put this on? Something like that. If it's background noise, music, these background noise, something you've taken from the birds singing, forest noises, that's not an issue. And a good point from Megan as well, if you want to put music onto your show, you can't, you love that song by, I don't know, who do we, Beyonce. I want to put that on my podcast for whatever reason, and there are obviously rights issues there. So some music rights owners, whether it's the band or the record company, would be happy to let you reproduce some of that music for free, but you need to get in contact, find the way to get in contact and ask for the rights to reproduce that. And you would probably then need to list that on there. So I think that answers that question around separating audio from video. Are there any other questions from today's or from the first session that people want to talk about or answer, or anything they want to contribute, any ideas that they have?
Ismail, I think there were 2 more questions as part of that email
Yeah.
which I can
Go ahead.
quickly respond to those.
Yep.
Yeah. So one of you had reached out to us asking about a voice memo app on iPhones, and how they couldn't find one. And I don't use an Apple phone, but I'm pretty sure voice memo app is one of those apps that Apple shockingly gives you for free. I think if you search in your Apple store, I think it's what it's called, for voice memos, it should come up. So you can, if you download it to your phone, works great for recording. Really good audio quality, and you can take those files and then put them onto your computer or into Audacity. I think the second question there was about how to buy a laptop that meets some minimum requirements and things like that. And this question is really interesting because I think the person was considering buying a Lenovo laptop, and I'm somebody who has been using a Lenovo laptop for, I don't know, I think the last like 15 years, and so I highly recommend them for audio and video, just editing and playing around with it. The inbuilt microphones on almost all of them, even like the ThinkPad range and things like that, are very good. So just go ahead and buy something. Lenovo's work great for podcast mixing and things like that. For exact recommendations, maybe dig around a bit and read some reviews online, look into what people have said, things like that. But yeah, Lenovo's are great, and I'm saying this from personal experience. Same for a mic. I think there was a question about which mic is most like the size, what and what is a good size to carry around, what is a good mic to use in noisy places like the UNFCCC spaces to pick up. There's a lot of background noise to pick up audio clearly. We've mentioned, I recommended 3 in the last session, and of those, I would say if you have the funds for it, the Blue Yeti microphone is sort of like a good standard microphone, which will do an exceptional job with picking up. It's a USB microphone. It will do a great job. It's mentioned in the previous slide, so you can just go back and refer to it. And yeah, thanks Ismail for putting in the technical details for how much RAM and what processors you need. Yeah. Great. Any other questions?
None from me, but I do want to know, please, if people could really share with us and reach out. I want to hear any of your podcasts that you've made. And yeah, I really look forward to, hopefully, we'll be able to share as well through GFC's social media and others to help promote anything that you eventually get out there. Do persevere is one thing, because it's been a lot over 2 workshops, and it is a lot over a short space of time. But I think the idea here, like I said, was, Chitira and I said, is that it gives you the basics and it shows that it's possible. It does seem like a lot to deal with, but there's a lot of information out there also to support you, and it's hard to wade through that. But I do feel I would be very excited to be able to listen, even if you haven't published it yet and put it out there. If you want a critical eye, I'd really be interested to hear some of the products that come out of this. And I wish everyone the best of luck. Before we finish for today in these 2 sessions, there is a feedback form that we would really appreciate you filling in. It's in the chat there. It's 5 questions or so. It shouldn't take you long at all. And we really appreciate your feedback on the last 2 sessions and how you found them. And it can also help us shape future sessions if there are any things that we could do better.
Thanks, Ismail, for that. And just I quickly want to add, thank you all for showing up and being so present and being so interested and sending questions about it. I truly believe that podcasts, radio, actually any audio formats, are some of the most incredibly powerful ways to enact change in the world, because it is the most accessible form of listening of getting information from many people who don't have the time or the bandwidth or the means of technology to sit down in front of the video and watch it. Not everyone is going to have enough data to watch a million YouTube videos, but audio works brilliantly that way. And you can listen to it while you're doing all sorts of other jobs, which is why radio is also a really powerful way of reaching out to women in all the diversities, because most women are not sitting idly. They don't have the time to be sitting and watching television and evening news, but radio provides all of them a chance to find out more about the topics they're interested in while they are doing all the other while they're doing all their responsibilities and things like that in different parts of the world, right? So do not underestimate the power of podcasts, and we're so excited to see what you all come up with. If you create something, please send it to us. We'd be happy to listen, and we'd be happy to promote it and things like that. But thank you all so much. And thank you to the interpreters who have done an incredible job today. Thank you to Kraina for fantastic tech support throughout the 2 sessions. But yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, and have a good day. If you missed session 1, or you missed part of session 2, we'll be sharing those with you after. But thank you again. Bye, everyone.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.